The elite adventuring group Dawn has just informed Chamber that he has been expelled from the team, much to Chamber's horror. Witch Martha and magician Naru smiled evilly. The reason they gave was that he was a burden to the team, with no useful skills or powers. Then they told Jane that the only skill Chamber got from the goddess was the useless level up skill. They thought he wasn't worthy of the team, while the rest all had impressive skills, especially Jane, who is gifted with heroic skills. Jane put her hands on Martha and Naru's shoulders, panicking and asking them where Chamber was now. Both don't know and don't care, and Jane feels like her world has just collapsed. Elsewhere, Chamber is letting out his anger by fighting monkey-like creatures called ORCs. Still, he couldn't stop thinking about being expelled from the team. This makes him even more aggressive when confronting the ORCs. He took them down one after another. He panted but felt relieved, because he is strong enough to fight alone. He continued, each slash becoming more brutal. But suddenly a monster hit him on the head from behind, causing him to stumble and be in pain. The monster prepares to continue its attack, while Chamber remembers what Martha and Naru said, saying he was just a burden to them. Anger flared and Chamber tightened his grip on his sword, and he stabbed straight into the monster's chest. He defeated the last orc but fell to the ground. With his last breath, he looked up at the sky, thinking this was his end. As his vision faded, a voice suddenly rang out, announcing that he had leveled up. Chamber was confused but felt his body recover. He examined the wound and found it was all gone. He wondered what had just happened and where that voice came from. A glowing control panel appeared in front of him, and Chamber recognized the words and numbers on it as information about his skills, displayed as numeric values. He suddenly realized that this was his level up, and the dashboard was showing that his physical abilities had improved. Chamber was excited to know his skills would make him unstoppable. He jumped for joy, finally realizing the true potential of his power. He rushed to fight monsters for many days everywhere. With each monster defeated, he felt his body become lighter and more agile. He can even use magic now, something he couldn't before. He defeated the orcs as before, but this time it took almost no effort before they fell. He cheered at his progress and thought he could do this forever. However, one day he realized his level was no longer increasing, no matter how many monsters he fought. He lay on the bed wondering, was it because he had fought the same monsters too many times, and they were no longer a challenge to his strong body? However, he did not want to give up and was determined to become stronger. Chamber came to the Adventurers Guild to find a quest to help him become stronger, but only found the request to serve the community boring. He asks receptionist Nyako, a tiger woman, to find him a more difficult and interesting assignment. Nyako, tired of his insistence, told him to stop bothering. The conversation was interrupted by a group making noise in the background. They saw an adventurer priestess surprised at being kicked out of the team. The group leader told her she was useless and disappointed him. The scene reminded Chamber of when he was kicked off the team. The nun tried to chase after the old group, but she gave up. She stood and cried in front of the crowd. Chamber approached, he smiled and told her she could join his team. The crowd was surprised. Many people started laughing, making her even more embarrassed. The group of adventurers mocked her for having someone to look after her, and they both laughed because they were so compatible. Chamber took his new friend to the pub. There he encouraged her to make a toast, cheering her on. She smiled at his efforts, and they raised their glasses together. He introduced himself, and she said her name was Isle, and she was a D-rank adventurer. Chamber replied that he was currently C-rank, even though his skills were more like a D-rank. As if comparing who was more pathetic, she loudly said that she was only an E-level, even worse than that. She sadly talked about herself as a priestess who only knew how to use weak healing magic that was no stronger than healing medicine. She suddenly shouted that she was useless. Chamber understood that feeling and thought he had been in the same situation as her. Without warning, without any emotion, Isle said she needed 30 more points to advance. Isle's eyes opened wide as if she had just woken up from a coma. She hastily apologized and explained that she always said random words out of control due to her divine oracle skills, which she considered useless. Chamber stared at Isle, trying to absorb what she had just said about leveling up. He stood up, grabbed her shoulders, and firmly said that he needed her no matter what. Elsewhere, Martha is kicking out another member from Team Dawn. Members were shocked to hear all the criticism from her. I can't stand it anymore. He grabbed the sword at his side and was about to pull it out. Martha shot a fire spell right next to him, threatening to keep him still. He had no other choice but to leave. Jane looked at the scene and thought her teammates were being too harsh on the new member. Martha and Naru just laughed, saying that their team was only worthy of the best. Jane pondered, realizing that her teammates were now arrogant because the skills they were given made them think they were special. He was amazed at how power could change people. Although he enjoys seeing the Dawn team continue to rise in the rankings, he doesn't feel as much a part of the team as he once did. He recalls happy memories with Chamber and wonders if they made the right decision in letting him go. Chamber and Isle prepare to form a new team. The two fought the goblins to test their coordination. Chamber easily destroys most of them without tiring. Isle was extremely impressed, jumping up and down with joy next to him. Chamber tried to contain his joy at being praised by a beautiful girl. Isle held Chamber's hand to examine the wound on his arm and heal it, but Chamber suddenly promoted, causing her to panic when the wound disappeared immediately. She was scared, making Chamber realize he needed to explain to her. At night, while camping, Aesel heard a story about Chamber's strength, that he always received increased strength after accumulating enough points from defeating monsters. Although she was surprised, she felt jealous that her divine oracle skills were of no help. Feeling sad caused Chamber to ask why she became an adventurer. Isle replied that she joined for revenge. She tells him about once belonging to a big family, until they were killed by robbers on the way to a family job in which she was too young to participate. She found herself living in an orphanage. She refused to interact with people and was left with only hatred in her heart. She hopes that one day her adventures will lead her to revenge. But now, she realized her family wouldn't want her to live just for revenge. What she wanted now was to become a famous adventurer. Even though that seems silly, Chamber doesn't think her dream is silly, hopes that one day they can do it together. Isle was surprised to see that the guy had no problem with his dream, and they agreed to continue collaborating. Isle also asked him why he became an adventurer. He recalls his childhood, as a child witnessing a 10-year-old Jane defeat an adult adventurer in a sword fight. He challenged Jane to a duel, and he was defeated 33 times without any effort from Genius. Jane warns him that he will never be able to defeat her, no matter how hard he tries, because he has no talent. However, Chamber was not discouraged. He protested and shouted to Jane that he would never give up, regardless of his stubbornness. This made Jane curious. He asked Chamber's name. Chamber introduces himself and declares that one day he will become the world's greatest adventurer. Isle loved his story and found it cute that he and his friend were enemies. This makes Chamber wonder if he and Jane are truly rivals. Meanwhile, the Dawn Party group boycotted a new member. Jane was feeling annoyed with his teammates because he had lost count of the number of people they had rejected. He asked them to give everyone a chance to prove themselves before sending them away. Martha objected, saying that they were all incompetent, no matter how hard they tried. This statement made Jane remember his childhood matches with Chamber, and how his friend proved to him that talent isn't everything. He tells Martha and Naru that they are on a different wave level, and he announced that he would disband the group. The two girls were so shocked that they dropped the drinks in their hands. Martha yells at Jane for disbanding a group that was about to become the strongest group. Jane agrees that they may be the strongest group in terms of skills, but not in other areas. He left, leaving the two girls kneeling on the floor, completely shocked when Jane walked away. Jane feels happy to have a fresh start, and wonders if Chamber is doing well on her own. At another pub, Chamber is sitting alone at a table. A cold cup suddenly touched his cheek, making him scream. It turned out that a drunk Isle had just teased him and couldn't help but laugh. But she suddenly stopped laughing, looked at him with blank eyes, and said that he needed 69 more points to level up. With this information, Chamber calculated that every time he leveled up, the total experience needed always doubled. The girl turned back to being a happy drunk, as if nothing had happened. Chamber comments on how much she likes beer. Isle suddenly started crying, making Chamber feel guilty, thinking he said something wrong. In fact, Isle confessed that she only felt happy when she was with him, whereas before she felt like a burden. Now, when she was with Chamber, she felt like she was truly an adventurer. Isle was so happy that tears kept flowing. Chamber replied that it was she who saved him from the bottom of the abyss. I was about to say something more, but then he realized Isle had fallen asleep on the chair. He smiled at her and thanked her for saving him. The next morning, Isle greeted Chamber cheerfully, as if she hadn't been drunk last night. They encountered Goblin, and they rejoiced in defeating them all. Chamber's status screen opened, signaling that he had just leveled up. He felt confused when he saw an arrow pointing towards Isle. A voice announced that he could now form a party. He checked the status again and saw a new feature. Allows him to team up with 3 others, and Isle can join. He didn't understand what this meant since he and Isle were teammates. I was about to press the button to add Isle to the group, but he remembered that he needed to ask her permission first. He shyly asked her if she wanted to form an official group with him. This question confused her, and she replied that they were already teammates. Chamber was confused. He tried to explain what he meant, and in the end he just said that they could officially become a group. Isle nodded in agreement, as if answering a marriage proposal. Chamber smiles and declares that they will continue their adventure together. He pressed the button, officially adding Isle to the group. Chamber waited for something to happen, but he felt like nothing had changed about him, even though they were now official teammates. Isle felt excited and wanted to start a mission immediately. They decide to explore the magical forest of Noye. While there is still daylight, in the forest, they encounter and defeat many different types of monsters. They decided to get magic stones from the last monsters they had just defeated. They bring it back and sell it to the guild to make money. Immediately, the level up alarm rang out, but this time Isle also heard it. Her body began to glow, making her feel confused. Chamber realized that adding her to the party meant she would also be leveled up. He told her to check her status screen. She was just about to ask him the meaning of those words when her status screen appeared in front of her. Chamber explained to her, saying that she had just leveled up. At the same time, he explained the meaning of the numbers on the screen. But the only thing she could understand was that she had become stronger. Isle was so happy that she jumped up and down. She stopped when the status screen announced that she had just acquired a new ability. Light Arrow? She was even more excited because she now had not only healing magic but also an additional attack ability. They faced a giant tree and Isle decided to try out her new ability. She raised her staff towards it and chanted the Arrow of Light. An arrow of light shot out from the stick and hit the tree trunk. They looked closely and saw that the arrow had made a hole. Isle couldn't contain her excitement and kept stomping on the ground. Their joy was interrupted when dozens of goblins appeared because of the noise. They fled as the goblins chased them, but they discovered more goblins appearing ahead. The two rushed into battle, rushing through the goblins. A goblin caught up with Isle and grabbed her backpack. Chamber told her to throw away her backpack, and she did so, dropping the food inside as well. The goblins were attracted by the smell of food, helping Isle escape. Chamber also threw away his backpack to slow down the goblins even more. Only when they got out of the forest could they breathe a sigh of relief. They realized that none of the goblins had chased them out of the forest. They returned to the guild, which reports to Nyako about what happened in the forest. After Nyako finished listening, she told the two to follow her upstairs to an elf member of the guild. The elf led them to a door, and when they entered, they met a man in a suit waiting. The man said that he had a special mission just for the two of them. The man in the suit introduced himself as Shirunui, the guild manager. He hired them on an investigative mission, returning to the Noya forest, to discover why goblins have appeared so much recently. The guild suspects that there is a goblin king lurking in the forest. To emphasize the seriousness of the mission, Shirunui shouted for Chamber and Isle to retreat if they encountered the goblin king. Back in the Noya forest, Chamber told Isle that she didn't need to come along because the mission was too dangerous. However, Isle replied that they were teammates after all, so she still wanted to continue. As they were walking through the forest, they suddenly saw a herd of goblins led by a goblin that was taller than the others. The large goblin was holding an old rusty sword. Chamber realized this was a goblin swordsman, stronger and more dangerous than normal goblins. He warns Isle and the two prepare to fight, encouraging themselves that they can defeat it. Isle shot an arrow of light at the goblin swordsman, injuring its eyes. Chamber immediately followed, beheading the goblin. After defeating all the remaining goblins, Isle heals Chamber's wounds and reminds him not to push himself too hard, as they are not on a monster hunting mission. Chamber replies that they still need to fight many monsters to level up, becoming strong enough to face the Goblin King, just in case they encounter it. Meanwhile, they discovered traces of a pile of firewood. Looking closer, they noticed there were goblin footprints around. They surmised that the goblins had ambushed a group of adventurers while they were camping. Isle saw something sparkling on the ground and picked it up. She recognized it as an earring which had belonged to her old leader, Adelina. This worried Isle so much that she asked them to continue deeper into the forest. The two followed the trail and found the corpses of goblins scattered about. They saw a trail of blood and followed it until they discovered a cave. Chamber senses danger in the darkness and tells Isle to stay back. He uses light magic. He summons a ball of light to illuminate his surroundings. They go deeper into the cave and discover Adelina, Valtz, and Ricardo, severely injured and too weak to stand. Isle immediately went to their side and healed them. They asked her why she helped, even though they treated her badly before. She smiled and replied that the most important thing to her was being able to help others as an adventurer. Adelina thinks Isle is stupid, but thanks her for treating them. She said that when she returned, she would treat Isle and Chamber to a drink. Suddenly, they heard noises outside the cave and were alert. When they looked out, they saw a goblin mage leading the group of goblins. As Adelina and the group prepare to attack, Isle rushed in to attack first with light arrow magic. The trio was surprised to see that Isle had attack magic. Chamber joined the battle, destroying the remaining goblins. The trio couldn't believe how strong the two of them were. While fighting, Chamber and Isle heard the announcement that they had leveled up. They happily cheered in front of everyone's surprised eyes. Former teammates looked at Isle and saw something different about her. Adelina smiled, realizing her old companion was now strong and happy thanks to Chamber. On the way back, they discovered another group of goblins. Valtz took up his weapon and rushed to attack, thinking he had to avenge what had happened. But a cloaked figure appeared, blocking Valtz's attack. He killed both Valtz and the goblins in a single move right in front of Chamber and the rest. The group stood before the mysterious figure. The group feels scared because of the enemy's presence, but they also know that they cannot run away. They pulled out their weapons, deciding to confront this ghost together. They assigned tasks. Chamber and Ricardo would fight on the front lines, and Isle and Adelina would provide support from the rear. Chamber told himself that he was leveled up enough to deal with the stranger, but his sweaty and nervous expression said otherwise. The attack begins. Isle shoots light arrows at the stranger. The ghost avoided it, and while regaining its balance, Chamber swung his sword at the enemy again, but the opponent dodged it, showing incredible flexibility. The man in the cloak attacked Chamber with a sword, and even though Chamber was able to block it, he had to use all his reflexes to hold on. Meanwhile, Ricardo rushed in from behind, hoping his blow would avenge Valtz. His attack hit the target but did not cause any damage. Ricardo realized that under the enemy's torn clothes was a body as hard as armor. The enemy turned their attack to Ricardo. Even with armor, the enemy's slash still penetrated the metal and seriously injured Ricardo. While trying to hold on, Ricardo grabbed his enemy's helmet. And as he fell, the enemy's face was revealed to be a black goblin with tattoos on his face and long white hair. Chamber felt curious when he saw a black goblin. But before he could think any further, the enemy turned his attention to him and gave him a sword strike, seriously injured his cheek, leaving him unable to use his eyes to dodge the attack. Luckily, Isle shot an arrow of light into the goblin's face, causing it to stop immediately. At this moment, the goblin turned his gaze to her. Isle realized she had accidentally angered the monster and didn't know what to do. Chamber screamed at her to run as the goblin rushed towards her. Suddenly, Adelina stood in front of Isle and was able to block the goblin's attack. However, the monster's blow was powerful, so much so that Adelina was seriously injured in the abdomen. Adelina looked at Isle and said that she had paid her debt to her. Isle wants to heal you, but Adelina knew there was no chance while the monster was still coming. When the goblin was about to kill Adelina, Chamber rushed in from behind, hitting the monster with his sword. Despite his efforts, Chamber's blow only angered the goblin rather than injuring it. The goblin overpowers Chamber in a sword fight and knocks him into a tree. Adelina continued to attack the monster. She blocked its strike, but her blade still cut the goblin's left eye, making it scream in pain. The monster was so angry that he stabbed Adelina in the stomach. Isle advised Adelina to run away, but she refused, unable to leave her teammates behind to seek revenge. However, Adelina tells Isle that they are no longer teammates and encourages her to run away. The monster pulled the sword from Adelina's belly, causing her to die right before Isle's eyes, leaving her terrified. Isle is easy prey before the enemy and has no choice but to step back step by step when the monster advances. At the same time, Chamber was trying to get up. He decided to attack the monster's head. He rushed to attack the monster. But the monster swung his sword and slashed Chamber's sword in half. The monster also injured his shoulder. Chamber noticed that the enemy's blade was burning with blue flames. The monster grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. Chamber understood that he was about to die, but when he saw Isle still alive in the background, he knew he had to survive to protect her. He dropped his sword. He used his hand to touch the goblin's injured left eye. The monster screamed in pain and released Chamber. Chamber saw that the enemy was distracted and immediately ran to help Isle up so they could both retreat. The goblin still hadn't regained his sight and was swinging his sword wildly. Meanwhile, Chamber and Isle are attempting to escape the forest. They finally reached town and entered the Hunter's Guild, but could not stand. Nyako approached Chamber to help him inside, seeing him covered in wounds. She shouted, asking to treat them. Chamber told her to treat it later because he needed to report to Shiranui. Shiranui appears and tells Chamber to heal first and then tell the story. After being taken care of, Shiranui leads them to the office of a mysterious man. This person was an older, muscular man who introduced himself as Guildmaster Dingle. Dingle suggests that the black goblin they encountered may be under the protection of a dark god. He explains that humans worship the goddess Nia, but other races also have their own gods, including monsters. He believed the black goblin was blessed by the god Azi Dahaka and possessed abilities similar to those given to humans by Nia. He announced that they had called for more help from other guilds and that they should leave the black goblins to them to deal with. Shiranui gives them the right to abandon their investigation mission. Chamber thinks giving up might be best, but he felt angry because he wasn't strong enough. He looked at Isle trembling and felt sorry for her as all her old comrades were dead. Isle suddenly spoke up, telling the guildmaster that all the bad things that happened were because she was determined to continue the investigation mission. She admitted that she blamed herself for her old team's deaths, as she believed they could have survived if they had just stayed in the cave. Chamber kept wanting to intervene, telling her it wasn't right, but she just kept making excuses about why everything was her fault, including how she was useless in battle, that Adelina had to die because of her. She cries and laments that someone will always get hurt trying to protect her. Chamber thought for a moment, then replied, he felt the same way because he also felt useless. Isle reminded him that she owed her safety to him several times. However, the young man replied that he felt the same for her, because it was her arrow of light that saved him from the black goblin. He admits that he relies on her for support, which surprises her. He recalls all the times Isle saved him from monsters and made her realize that being a team means protecting each other in dangerous situations. He declared his decision to be a hunter, willing to sacrifice his life to protect his comrades with every beat of his heart. Isle looked at Chamber, overwhelmed by his determination. Chamber continued to say that he wanted to become even stronger, and to achieve that goal, he proposed to Isle that they would become strong together. Until one day, they can destroy the Black Goblin. Isle agrees, saying she will become strong enough that no one will have to protect her anymore. Chamber watched her hands clench with determination, and he felt happy that she had surpassed expectations. Chamber tells Dingle and Shiranui that they will abandon the investigation mission. Surprising everyone in the room, he explains that he wants to ask them for a new monster hunting mission, to destroy the Black Goblin. Dingle laughed loudly, amused by the young man's audacity. He told Shiranui to give the guild's key to Chamber, then asked Chamber to follow him. They went down to the basement. They arrived at the door of the gold room. Dingle tries to find the specific key from the set of keys, but because I was so upset when I couldn't find it, he decided to break the lock. The guildmaster went inside while the others waited outside the door. After passing through a cloud of dust and smoke, Dingle came back out and gave Chamber something. The boy was surprised when he saw it was a sword made of pure gold. Dingle tells Chamber that this sword is the Thunderblade, known as Thor. Guildmaster gave it to Chamber. Although Dingle held it calmly, in reality the sword was so heavy that Chamber could not lift it. Although it was smaller than the sword Chamber used, Thunderblade still feels much heavier. He felt like if it wasn't for the level increase, he probably would have dropped it. Dingle explains that this sword once belonged to a friend of his who died in battle. He recalls his friend bravely facing a giant dragon, sacrificing himself to protect his comrades. Chamber asked him why he gave this important sword to him, but the old man did not answer. In fact, Chamber's words about wanting to become an adventurer, willing to sacrifice to protect his friends, reminded Dingle of his deceased friend. He told Chamber not to worry about the reason, but to worry about the reward he would receive from the next mission. Chamber doesn't understand what he's talking about, but Dingle used his power as guildmaster to directly assign him the task of exterminating the Black Goblin. Chamber and Isle continued their climb up the hill. Isle saw her partner sweating and breathing heavily, his face pale with exhaustion, as if the weight of the battle had drained every last ounce of strength from him, leaving him on the verge of collapse. She knew that he was having difficulty carrying the heavy sword on his back. The young man replied that although the sword was very heavy, he was proud to carry it, for Dingle trusted him enough to give him a part of his old friend. He was more worried about being stronger to be worthy of holding it, and face the Black Goblin. After a while, they came to a deserted forest full of dead trees. This is called the hunting ground of cruelty. They saw 3 goblin guards walking together. From a close distance, they rushed to attack them. While rushing in, Chamber felt the weight of the sword, but slowly the sword began to accumulate electricity. The boy remembered what Dingle had said, that the Thunderblade was an offensive weapon that became stronger and lighter the more it hit. As Dingle said, the electricity on the blade became stronger and stronger. With each swing, it became more powerful. The feeling was so strong that Chamber's entire body was enveloped in a blast of lightning, enhancing his speed, power enough to cut a goblin guard in 2 in one slash. He continued moving towards another goblin guard, and he took another powerful swing. When they were about to rest, Chamber saw a rock about to fall on them. He immediately pushed Isle out of the way, saving them both from impact. It turned out that the monster that threw the rock was a goblin 3 times larger than them, shaped like a gorilla called Goblin Leader. They discussed that the purpose of entering this hunting area was to confront it. Seeing the giant monster approaching, it was holding a tree trunk as a weapon. Both are determined to defeat it to gain experience points. Chamber tells Isle to use light arrows to distract the monster. He rushed to attack while Isle shot an arrow. The arrow hit the Goblin Leader's left eye, but it did not slow down, continuing to swing its trunk towards Chamber. Chamber tried to hit the monster's forehead, but the wound was not deep enough to cause much damage. Having no other choice, Chamber activated the sword's lightning power and began swinging it vigorously. He remembered Dingle's words, that the sword can emit lightning when it is charged with enough energy. When swinging the sword, a powerful bolt of lightning shot straight at the Goblin Leader, causing the monster to be overwhelmed and fall to the ground. Chamber was surprised to see the power of the attack just now. He felt the sword become heavier in his hand as it lost its strength. Chamber realized that this move should only be used when absolutely necessary. Suddenly, a voice announced that they had both reached level 8. They were happy to hear that the experience points from the Goblin Leader far exceeded their expectations. As they checked the status, Chamber was happy to know he could now use healing magic. However, the one who was most excited was Ale, as she had just learned the spell Light Javelin, an attack more powerful than Light Arrow. They returned to the guild, recounting the story of defeating the Goblin Leader, shocking the crowd. Chamber gives the magic stone obtained from the goblin to Nyako and asks for a reward. The beast employee was surprised, not understanding why he was so strong. Chamber replied that he would never reveal his secret. He and Isle rested at the pub. Isle asked what they would do next, since it would be difficult to find a monster stronger than the Goblin Leader. Chamber reassured her, confident that he had a plan. The next day, they return to the hunting area, where there is fierce territorial competition between goblin leaders. Chamber explains that since they defeated the goblin leader in this area, now they just need to wait for another goblin leader who wants to expand their territory. At that moment, a new goblin leader appeared with its goblin army. But not long after, another goblin leader also appeared from the opposite side, even though the atmosphere was tense. Chamber smiled, realizing they were in the ideal situation to gain a lot of experience. They destroy all the goblins. After a short rest, they encountered another goblin leader and continued to defeat it. At the end of the journey, both of them reached level 12. Meanwhile, a goblin leader with his herd of goblins appeared in the middle of town, causing both hunters and civilians to panic. At the same time, at the guild, Shiranui and Dingle saw the teacup on the table shaking, and they wonder what's going on out there. Nyako suddenly knocked on the door and rushed in, telling his superiors, "Goblins are wreaking havoc throughout the streets." She also said that the D-rank hunters had begun to take action, but were having difficulty because there was a goblin leader among the chaos. Dingle asked her where the high-ranking hunters were. She replied that since the Black Goblin incident, many high-ranking hunters had left, choosing safe towns to work in. Dingle tells Shiranui to take up arms, deciding to handle the situation himself. He rushed to the battlefield, and he witnessed the destruction the goblins caused. A frightened young magic hunter fired a spell at the goblin leader, but it only made the monster angry and focused on the girl. The giant goblin prepared to swing its giant arm down on the girl without warning. Suddenly, a powerful beam of light from behind hit the goblin, stopping it. Nyako and Dingle realized that from afar. Chamber and Isle were present. The two wonder why there are goblins in town, and they noticed many injuries on the goblin leader's body, which made them suspect that something unusual was going on. Isle cast Enchant Light on Chamber's sword, strengthening his already strong Thunderblade. Chamber rushes into battle. He destroyed a series of goblin swordsmen in the blink of an eye, surprising the surrounding hunters. Dingle observed carefully and realized that Chamber's strategy was to defeat weak opponents first, thereby storing energy for his weapon, preparing to confront the goblin leader. Chamber approached the goblin leader. As the large monster rushed in to attack Chamber, Chamber dodged and slashed the back of its leg. When it falls, Chamber surrounded himself with lightning and he jumped into the air. He stabbed the sword into the monster's neck. Chamber stood over the body of the goblin leader, receiving loud cheers from the surrounding hunters for his strength. Dingle praises Chamber and says he has become much stronger. Afterwards, Chamber and Isle talked to Dingle and Shiranui at the guild. The guild leaders listened to Chamber's explanation about leveling up skills to increase their strength. Guildmaster asked why Chamber shared that valuable information with them, and Chamber replied that he felt he could trust them. Dingle asked curiously, but Chamber only replied that that was how he felt. His simple answer made Dingle laugh. Then they turned to serious topics. They discussed the events happening in the town. They said that goblins rarely left their territory. Chamber also reported that there was something suspicious about the goblin leader's scarred body. They wonder if there is any involvement of the Black Goblin in this incident. Shiranui speculates that since Black Goblin has been found killing goblins before, it is possible that this creature views the goblins as its enemies. He theorizes that the goblin leader may have lost territory to the Black Goblin in a battle. And if so, then these goblins weren't attacking the town, but were just running away from the Black Goblins. Shiranui emphasized that it was just his theory. Dingle worries that if that's the case, they need to stop the Black Goblin before its influence spreads further. Chamber and Isle looked at each other. Both stated that they would resolve the matter themselves immediately. Nyako informed them that reinforcements from other guilds would arrive in the next few days, and that they should wait before entering the new forest. However, Chamber says that he and Isle are determined to confront the Black Goblin themselves. As the two begin their journey back to the forest, Nyako, as a female cat warrior, wishes them safety and tells them to return in one piece. After that, the two went deep into the Noi forest. They came across the corpse of a giant wild boar beast cut in half. Looking closer, they realized the magic stone was still intact inside the body, and there was no sign that the flesh had been removed. The two quickly understood that this was the actions of the Black Goblin. They continued to move deeper into the forest, farther than ever before. Suddenly, a giant spider appeared right next to Isle's face, causing the powerful nun to panic. Chamber immediately slashed it in half. Observing the spider's corpse, they realized it was a paralysis spider. Looking up, they saw countless similar spiders clinging to the trees. Ignoring the spider's presence, they continued moving forward. However, the two felt strange when they had traveled a very long distance but still did not see any goblins. They remembered the last time they had to flee from a large group of goblins. But now the forest seemed completely different, suspiciously silent. They agree that something strange is going on. Going a little further, they spotted it from afar, a village with makeshift wooden tents. Inside the tents were goblins, constantly looking around as if on high alert for some danger. The two decided to observe this village for a while, taking turns guarding it. At night, when Isle fell asleep, Chamber remained on high alert, observing every movement in the village. The sky gradually brightens. But the situation still did not change. The goblins continued to be on guard. Chamber was about to think that this was just a waste of time. Then his eyes suddenly discovered something. The Goblin King, was heading straight towards the village.